But just because you learn Hebrew don't make you Hebrew.
The Khazars, as they were known, ruled the steppes north of the Black Sea and became increasingly prominent because of the military resistance they put up during the period of the great conquests in the decades following Muhammad's death. Their effectiveness against the Islamic armies won them the support of a constellation of other tribes, who united under their leadership. It also caught the attention of the Roman emperors in Constantinople, who understood that there were mutual benefits to be had from striking an alliance with the dominant force on the steppes. So important were the Khazars as allies that in the early 8th century, 2 marriage alliances were arranged between the ruling houses of Khazaria and Byzantium, the name normally given to what remained of the Roman Empire in this period. From the point of view of Constantinople, Byzantium's capital, imperial marriages with foreigners were rare. Alliances with steppe nomads were all but unprecedented. The development is a clear indication of how important the Khazars had become in Byzantine diplomatic and military thinking. The Khagan had 25 wives, each a member of a different tribe, and each the daughter of its ruler. A source written in Hebrew in the 9th century likewise talks of tribes that were subject to the Khazars. Peoples like the Polyan, Radmichi, or Severlane were among those who recognized the overlordship of the Khazars, enabling the latter to strengthen their position and become the dominant force on the western steppe in what is now the Ukrain and southern Russia. In the middle of the 9th century, they decided to become Jewish. "From time immemorial," they said, "we have known only one God, that is Tengri, who rules over everything. Now the Jews are urging us to accept their religions and customs, while on the other hand, the Arabs draw us to their faith, promising us peace and many gifts." A delegation was therefore dispatched with the aim of converting the Khazars. It was led by Constantine, best known by his Slavonic name Cyril, in order to debate with Jewish scholars also heading to the Khagan's court. When they arrived in the Khazar capital, they took part in a highly charged series of debates against rivals who had been invited to present Islam and Judaism. News of the Khazar conversion had been received by astonished Jewish scholars thousands of miles west, who eagerly tried to find out more about who the Khazars were and how they came to be Jewish. There was speculation that they might be one of the lost tribes of ancient Israel. The scholar Hasdai B. Shaprut, who was based in Cordoba, in Islamic Spain, finally managed to make contact with the tribe. His endeavors to establish whether the Khazars were indeed Jewish, or whether this was simply a tall tale put out by those wanting to win his favor, had hitherto drawn a blank. When he finally received confirmation that it was indeed true that the Khazars were Jewish, and moreover that they were wealthy and were very powerful and maintained numerous armies, he felt compelled to bow down and adore the God in heaven. Remarkably, a copy of the Khagan's reply to this letter survives, with the Khazar ruler explaining his tribe's conversion to Judaism. The decision to convert, wrote the Khagan, was the result of the great wisdom of one of his predecessors, who had brought delegations representing different faiths to present the case for each. Having pondered how best to establish the facts, the ruler had asked the Christians whether Islam or Judaism was the better faith. When they replied that the former was certainly worse than the latter, he asked the Muslims whether Christianity or Judaism was preferable. When they lambasted Christianity and also replied that Judaism was the less bad of the two, the Khazar ruler announced that he had reached a conclusion. Both had admitted that the religion of the Israelites is better, he declared. So, trusting in the mercies of God and the power of the Almighty, I choose the religion of Israel, that is, the religion of Abraham. With that, he sent the delegations home, circumcised himself, and then ordered his servants, his attendants, and all his people to do the same. Judaism had made serious inroads into Khazar society by the middle of the 9th century. Apart from references in Arabic sources to proselytization by Jews, as in the decades before the arrival of the delegations at the Khagan's court, and the fact that burial practices underwent a transformation during this period too, the recent discovery of a series of coins minted in Khazaria provides strong evidence that Judaism had been formally adopted as a state religion in the 830s. Inevitably, this caught the attention of the Viking Rus, as did the tribute paid to the Khagan by the various subject tribes. One by one, these were picked off and their loyalties and payments redirected to aggressive new overlords. By the second half of the 9th century, the Slavic tribes of central and southern Russia were not only paying tribute to the Scandinavians, but were being forbidden to make any further payments to the Khazars on the grounds that there was no reason for them to pay it. Payment was to be made to the Rus leader instead. In the east, it was not long before the increasingly heavy presence of the Rus resulted in outright confrontation with the Khazars. After launching a series of raids on Muslim trading communities on the Caspian Sea that spilled rivers of blood and continued until the Viking Rus were gorged with loot and worn out with raiding, the Khazars themselves were attacked. Atil was sacked and completely destroyed in 965. "If a leaf were left on a branch, one of the Rus would carry it off," wrote one commentator. "Not a grape, not a raisin remains in Khazaria." The Khazars were effectively removed from the equation, and profits from trade with the Islamic world flowed in even greater volumes towards northern Europe, as the quantities of coin hoards found along the waterways of Russia show. By the end of the 10th century, the Rus had become the dominant force on the western steppe.
Just because you learn Hebrew don't make you Hebrew. But just because you learn Hebrew don't make you Hebrew.